Yo, what's going on, golf fans? It's your boy, Gsluke, here with our round 3 prop and betting stream for the BMW Championship. Going to get you guys ready for all that moving day action, both from the BMW Championship side, also for LIV and the DP World Tour. Going to talk through all 3 golf slates and help give you guys an idea of exactly what to do for tomorrow. And I've got to go ahead and cough real quick while I clear my throat there a little bit. Still getting over that residual sickness from last week, but excited to get into all that action for tomorrow. And with any bet deep dives that you've got for me in the chat too. We've got Golf Kid down there who's calling Scotty to catch Robert McIntyre. I would normally call that a hot take for somebody to make up like a 5-shot deficit, but not so much when it's world number 1. So we'll have to check back on that, see if you end up being right. But I tend to agree with you, I'd say. I mean, the guy is going to rise to the top. He's done it a little bit quicker than he's done at some recent events. We have Jose down there. He said he combined the Harry Hall with Hoagster for the over on birdies and made $200. Love to hear that as well. We also had Jack from Twitter who hit me up and also used the Harry Hall pick to some success as well. So glad that we were able to catch a few dubs out there, even if our main exposure didn't go through. So tomorrow, hoping to bounce back, have a little bit of a better performance than what we did for round 2. So let's hop on into this thing real quick with, first off, look at the PGA slate, and then we're going to talk about the LIV Golf and DP World Tour side as well. So PGA side played easier just like we thought. So that really helped out with a lot of leans that we took. Didn't end up helping out with the fairway props, though. That average went up compared to round number 1. But overall, we expected the softer conditions, the more receptive greens, to make it a little bit more scoreable than what it was for Thursday. And that is essentially exactly what happened. The most significant change was with the bogey average, which dropped nearly an entire bogey per round. Your birdie average also went up from about 3 per round to about 3.5. Your fairway average went up. You already touched on that, but your green average also went up rather drastically as well. So none of that was really that atypical, really helped out on a lot of our exposure, which didn't end up working out quite as much as we wanted to, but it was certainly the right lean that we were on for almost all of our bets. So that's round number 2. And what I'll say heading into tomorrow is that I think it's going to start to dry up just a little bit. And they do have a sub-air system, also a precision air system under a lot of the course as well, which will suck a lot of the moisture out of it. So though they did get the half-inch of rain and they did probably have them overnight in between these 2 rounds, a whole nother night of having that sub-air system on and that natural drying that occurred today. If you take a look at the scoring average for today, by the way, it was about a 0.2 shot difference between the first and the second half of tee times. And it's not like there was like 2 defined waves, right? It was just 49 players, continuous tee times off of hole number 1. So the fact that there was any sort of a difference between the 2 waves told us that towards the end, it started to get a little bit crispier. So I think for round 3, the scoring could actually get a little bit harder, which might be atypical for a lot of round 3 slates, because normally moving day pins make it a little bit easier. And we didn't have pin locations before we went live, but over this week, they've been posting them around 8 p.m. So we'll probably have those to go through. Anyone in chat, if you guys could, please, it would be much appreciated here. If you guys could let me know if they post that pin sheet so that we can go through those together. But I am thinking that they're going to be relatively receptive, especially on the par 5s. I would expect to see a lot of risk reward with the pin locations for round number 3. However, I think the course drying up, it being slightly harder to hold the fairways, the greens giving a little bit more bounce, especially with the sub airs under those green complexes, I think can make the scoring average closer to even par. Perhaps it depends on the pin locations, I would say, potentially even over par compared to today. You know, your birdie average could drop a bit. Your bogey average would go up to compensate for that kind of a difference. And then even your fairway and your green averages could also be compensated for in that kind of scenario. So don't sleep on that sort of an impact with that evaporation occurring. And if you take a look at the weather, it's almost the exact same as Friday. Low winds until the later half of the day. Towards the very end, the wind, quote unquote, kicks up, and kicking up today, was it going to like 7 to 8 miles an hour sustained? Wind gusts that got close to 10 to maybe a whopping 12 miles an hour, which is just a breath of wind, right? It's not really that much out there at all, but is a little bit higher than literally zero wind that they had the entire morning wave. It looks the exact same for Saturday. And this is the HRRR, which we rely on a little bit more than some of the other models, but it's the same thing with a lot of these other ones as well. Like the HRDPS is almost the exact same. NEM model, same kind of trend where if there's any wind, it's towards the very end of the PM wave. And then GFS is also one I like to look at. So let me move that little icon out of the way. That makes it stop streaming. We don't want to do that. Also, slightly higher sustained winds towards the PM wave there, but nothing is that significant. And it's the same exact trend that you had for today. So maybe the scoring could be a little bit harder for your last, I don't know, hour, 2 hours of tee times of the day. But those are also your informed players. Those are the guys that are playing the best golf this week, hence why they have the late tee time on Saturday. So fading all of them and expecting all of them to play terribly would also probably be a mistake as well. So we go through all of this for completion's sake, but there's not really anything that looks like there's going to be a massive edge on with this weather. Overall, though, I think scoring's closer to even par. I think, maybe slightly harder conditions wise. So if you can find somebody that's going off late, right? Maybe that it does have some good form, but perhaps it's short game based. They've, chipped in a bunch, or they gained a bunch of strokes putting to this point of the week. Maybe they could be fadeable because then they're playing in the harder conditions for tomorrow, and they've kind of been luck sacking it to this point of the week. But your early guys could also be pretty good spots for fades, especially if their ball striking form and all of that has been terrible to this point. In fact, one of the plays that we're about to go through together has been somebody that has been utter dog shit to this point. Most tour events, most events in general, they would be, packing their bags after 36 holes. We get to bet their unders for round number 3 and hope that they just don't care about what they're doing out there. So we'll talk about that. That's an added narrative that you can use for fading some guys. And especially for players that don't have any chance now to get into the top 30, I think you could see some real DGAF golf. Don't give a bleep golf for all the people out there. And make it slightly kid rated here just in case anyone has anyone around. But that's what I'm thinking for round number 3, guys. So we're going to go through some exposure now. I'll see in chat if we have those pin locations. If we do, I do want to kind of give a glance at those, get an idea for how it's setting up. But I'm expecting them to be a little bit easier than today. That's what I would lean on normally on a moving day. But I guess we'll see just how easy that's actually going to be. So pins dropped. Okay, we'll go through those. Look at that. Thank you guys for letting me know. We got the sweaty hard, try hards in chat. I knew you could count on you guys. Mav McNeely over 4 birdies. We'll look at the pins first, and I'll let you know. Then he said, you wish X was playing better. Easy guy to root for. Same thing, man. I like him too. A few years ago, I wasn't really the biggest fan of him, but he's kind of grown on me over the last, let's say, 18 months. So maybe he does it tomorrow. He at least gets to make the cuts, even though he's over par at this stage. That's the beauty of no cut. And, if anyone's really going to grind, I would say the guys that are still in the top 30 are going to care a little bit more than the guys that have nothing to play for and are outside the top of 30 because they have to play next week, right? The guys that are still in the top 30 guaranteed in, I don't think Xander is. I think Xander's outside looking in, so he's not really an example of that. But if there's some guy that's just blown up to this point, but he still has to work for next week, like let's say a Justin Thomas, for example, I don't think that he's going to give up for the next 2 days. So that could also be a narrative to consider for this. Let's see. I'm looking at under birdie props. Yeah, speaking of, that's actually going to be one that we take, Daniel. And he said, do you think you could still hit some fairways, even though it will still be, or it won't be as sticky? I still think the average is going to be about 8.5. That's what it was for round number 1. So I don't think it's going to be as high as what it was today. It was a little bit over 8.6 per round. I think with it drying up, it goes to maybe like 8.5. So like you can use that for the average. It depends on the player and the projection that they're at, Marwa, right? There's going to be value for overs and unders. So like I don't want to give you any sort of generalized statement on that because you want to base it off of that sort of an average. So hopefully that helps. It gives you a little starting point for that research. But like we were doing yesterday on live stream, kind of gave you guys a blueprint that you can use for a lot of those props. Look at the average. Look at where these guys are placed. Then you cross-reference that with their driving accuracy rank. and you can get a pretty good sense for whether it's a spot on line projection, maybe off by 0.5 to 1 in either direction, and then attack it that way. And we're probably going to do that to here at some point as well. But the first few props I'm taking to be birdie props. What's going on, Antonio? Welcome on in. And yeah, let's get this pin sheet up. So just 1 second here, guys, while I go ahead and bring that up on Twitter. And I'm assuming that they're going to be slightly easier, but the beauty is we don't have to guess, right? They'll sometimes surprise us, make it a little bit harder. Like today, they moved up the tee box at 11. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was something that we called for on last night's live stream. With that super hard pin location at 11, it was almost like a volcano. It felt like it was almost unfair unless they moved up that tee box, and that's exactly what they did. Not everyone went for it, and the players that held back, a lot of them weren't able to hit the ball close. Siwoo Kim did buck that trend. He hit it to like 2 feet. So a few other guys also hit it to like 5-6 feet. So it wasn't an impossible shot like I thought it was, but it was certainly very difficult. And if you did, at least if you didn't end up going for it. So we got the pin sheet up. Like I said, we don't have to guess on how this is going to play. He said he got some unders on strokes for Kim, McIntyre, and O'Bear. Feels right. Hey, if it feels right, then go for it, Jose, right? Like, I don't know. Ben with the gut is always something that I can't really, I'm not going to endorse, but I can't push back against too much because, I don't know, a lot of people swear by it. And hey, it's your money, right? So obviously enter what you want to get behind. So let's look at these props, these pin locations. So back left on hole number 1 does not immediately look that easy. It does slope from front to back though. So these back pin locations at 1 aren't as hard, but I will say that it's in a smaller cove of the screen rather than being in the fat side there in the back right is now in a, I don't know, half the size, little smaller section in this back left. I would say that it's a little bit harder than rounds 1 and 2. So I don't know. That's not a good sign for the moving day pin location kind of idea. Let's go to 2. 2 is in the very back. This is a long par 5 to begin with. Okay. So the idea of it being easier than today might actually kind of have to be thrown out the window, at least based on these 2 pins. This is significantly harder than they had for the first few days. Not only is it a long shot on already a 500 plus yard par 4, it's going to be like 530, 535 for tomorrow, unless they move up the tee box, which could happen. I mean, 535 kind of seems ridiculous for a par 5. So they'll probably move up the tee to account for it. But even so, it's still harder, way harder than the last few days, because up on this back shelf, it becomes a harder iron shot to get the distance control on. And if you miss the green, the chip shot's also a lot harder, because then you have to navigate what you're going to do with that slope, right? Whether it's running it up with, a putt, if you're on the green, putting it up that slope, which can be difficult to get the speed exactly right. But if you're chipping it, it is, one of the harder shots that you have in golf. So that's going to be a very difficult hole. 3 is in the middle left side of the screen. I would say that it looks easier than today, and it probably is slightly easier than round number 2, but it is tucked close to this bunker, and the sloping around this pin location outside of this slope right here isn't that helpful. Let's go to 4 next. So 4 is the par 5. That's going to be a front right pin location. This looks really easy. So this is a moving day pin. This is normally what we'd expect on a moving day, but this is really the only pin location so far where we can say that. Most of them so far, in fact, 2 of the first 4 have been more difficult than what we've had for the first few days. Let's go to 5 next. So 5 is, I didn't catch it. 5 is in the very front left. This seems easier. And this might be when they move up the tee box here. So here's the thing with 5. If it's a normal distance, they keep it at 350. This pin location will be a little bit easier than the first few days. It's like a normal moving day pin. But if they move up the tee box and they have the pin on the low area over here, it's going to play like a par 3. I mean, there was talks of them moving it up to just a 280-yard shot. You're going to have guys like Rory potentially hitting irons. Like, I don't know, I guess it depends on wind direction, but if it's downwind hitting iron because it's slightly downhill as well from that tee box, it would be just open season for Eagles. So hole 5, if you're betting Eagle props, I know a few people that watched this live stream were mentioning today, at least one of them was saying that they were betting them for round number 2. Round 3, if you can do it for a specific hole, hole 5, at least early, you can wait until the first guy tees off, and then you'll get an idea if they're going to move up that tee. If they move it up, just keep an eye on that, because Eagles are going to be like a 10, maybe even like 12 to 15% rate at that hole, if that's going to be the case. Let's go to 6 next. So 6 is going to be a back right pin location. This is going to be a harder pin than today, and a harder pin than round 1 as well. So yeah, the it looks like they're going to keep it hard, even though they're going to give them a bone on a few spots. Like, considering that the pins are tucked, it would not surprise me if they move up the tee box at 5, just because like it's so hard elsewhere so far. Let's go through 7. So 7 looks like an easy pin. It's like in the middle over here, about where my cursor is now. This pin, though, I shouldn't say it looks very easy, but look at that little slope to the right of it. It's towards the wide side of the green, but you have this little devious slope about 2 paces from where it's going to be. So I don't know if it's going to be harder because of that. Like, it feels like it's kind of silly to say that one little slope could completely overtake the hole and make it a hard one. But I think you're going to see some people that look silly either putting and, they, hit it too hard and it goes off the other side, or probably more likely guys that are chipping from in front of this bunker and trying to get to that pin location, that if they get a little bit too aggressive, they're going to end up on the other side of that green. So that's I don't know, another tricky one. It's not super hard. I don't want to say that. It's not as hard as some of the other ones we've seen, but definitely a little trickier there. Next up, we have 8, which looks like an easy one. It's like in the left middle quadrant, about where I am now. It's maybe a little harder than today just because it's a longer shot in, but just like today where it was towards the wider side of the green, it's the same thing once again. Let's go to 9. So 9 is a middle right pin location, so longer par 4 over here. I would say it's easier than today, probably easier than round 1 as well. Round 1, it was just over this bunker. Right side is the biggest quadrant, the flattest part of the green as well. So you're going to see more putts made at 9 than what you had for the first few days. Less slope normally means a lot more putts being actually dropped. 10 is in the back left. You see exactly how far off. Yeah, about 8 paces off. So about right here. This is a really hard one. Today it was on the low area. If you hit it along the contours, it would help you get closer. Now it's up on the top shelf of the cookie jars on the top end of the pantry. So it's hard to get back there and get those birdies. Next up, we've got 12, which is in the middle. Sorry, we're on 11. I'm getting ahead of myself there. 11, which is in the middle right side of the screen. This is the one that was moved up. So, I mean, after moving up the tee, they're probably moving it back, right? So they could go with it a back-to-back days. The only reason I'll throw that out there is because it's moving day. Any other scenario would be almost certain that they're going to move it back. But with moving day set up, especially with some of the harder pins that we've seen, if they don't move up the tee at 5, then maybe they decide to do it at 11 once again. But this pin location looks a lot easier. So that was part of the reason why I thought they would do it at 11, is because it looked like such a hard pin up on this top shelf. Now that it's on the lower portion, it's more accessible with a wedge to an even mid-iron shot. So I think that the chances of them moving up the tee box are certainly lower than what it was for today. Next up, we have 12, which was on the middle right side of this pin. It is about where the 2 is, actually. So Robert McIntyre's shot today would have been mighty fine useful on this green. But as you can see, it's on a lower area of the green. So I would say that it's easier than what you had today, just because it's a lot of the balls are going to feed to that spot as opposed to feeding away like what it was for today's pin location. Next up, we have 13, which is in the back left. So long par 3. There's a chance they move up the tee location, the tee box here. I only say that because it's 240, 250 yards to this back left pin location. So if they do so, it'll take away some difficulty, but the pin location is harder than the first few days. Next up, we have 14. 14 is a middle right pin. This looks like one that's harder than the first few days. And yeah, my suspicions, I would say rock solid there. Seems like the right angle. Let's see, 15 back left. This seems harder, but let's see. Yeah, up on a little bit of a shelf too. So that's another one that's going to be sneaky hard. That little bit of a contouring in the middle of the green, especially if you're missing the green complex, makes getting up and down just that much harder. Next we have 16, which is a par 5 front right. This looks easier. This is the goggle green that they have here. It kind of looks like goggles if you look at it like that. This looks like an easy pin again. So the first par 5 was also probably the easiest pin that you could get there. And I think it's the same thing here at 16. So that's something to look out for. Like, they're still giving these players a bone. That's why I think there's a decent chance that one of those 2 drivable par 4s is going to be drivable again, whether that's 5 or 11. Just because like they're doing that with the par 5s. Like it's clear that they want to give these guys a chance to do some kind of birdie production. 17 is a front middle pin location. They moved up the tee today. So they, I don't want to say they more than likely moved it back, but I'm kind of inclined to do so, because a lot of times they'll move it back after moving it up. If they move it back, this front middle pin location does look easier, but it's going to be a longer shot in. So I think it's probably going to play to about the same difficulty there, if that ends up being the case. If not, it might be a little easier than what you had the first couple of days. Water is in play, though. This, pin location is towards a less protected area, whether it be the water or this bunker, but it's in between the two. So if you pull it, you're in the bunker. If you end up overfading it as a right-handed player, then you're in the hazard. You could still make a mistake there, right? Even though it's on an easier spot. And then 18's in the middle right side of this pin of this green. It's about where my cursor is now. I would say harder than today, but easier than round one. Round one, it was in the very back. It was probably the hardest pin outside of what they're going to do on Sunday, which I would assume would be back right, because that's even harder than back left. But this middle right is probably the second most difficult, I'd say. So I would maybe like a 0.1 to 0.15 shot difference compared to what we had for round number two. But overall, to get back to these averages now, considering the drying out the golf course as well, I was saying like even par, like maybe like minus 0.25 as a scoring average. I think there's a chance that it plays even to maybe even like 0.25 over par. So these pin locations aren't quite as straightforward as these players are hoping for. And to note about the par five, so let's go back to those pin locations. That would be, what is it? 4, I believe. Yeah, 4 and then 16. Those two holes are 600 yards. Like, it's not like you're going for them in 2 with an iron or anything like that, where having a pretty reasonable pin location means you're going to be making a whole lot of eagles. I think if you have that tee moved up at 5, you're going to have more eagles at that hole than those 2 holes combined. So that's why I don't think this setup is as easy as, a lot of moving day setups could be, because it's a long 7,600 yard par 70, and a lot of the more difficult holes look like the ones where they're ramping up that difficulty. So if you guys remember LACC and they called it like a half par golf course, that's kind of what we've got here. We've got like 3 or 4 half pars in the positive direction, where like they're playing like par 3s and they're set up as par 4s and par 5s. Or and there's, for example, like the par 5s should be playing as par 4s essentially. But then you also have holes that are marked down as par 4s that could almost be par 5s, like the long par 4s with the really difficult pin location. So there's going to be a lot of variance. There's going to be a lot of ugly scores, I would say, like the bogey average, to go back to that before. Like, I think the birdie average could stay around 3.5. I'm not sure that one's going to move as much, but the bogey average, I feel like, is going to go up to like 2.8 per round, maybe even slightly even above 2.8 per round for round number 3. So it's a different setup, I would say. Definitely risk reward is what we got with those kind of pin locations. Doesn't really change how I'm looking at the slate. It was kind of what I was thinking they were going to do. Maybe slightly harder than what I was expecting there before. So let's talk through a few props I've already entered. Then we're going to go through a few bets that you guys have for me in the chat. Then we're going to actually go through the board a little bit more and try and find some value to add on top of it. But the first slip that I entered, and we'll go ahead and just relay it to you guys right now, is this under on Tom Hoge birdie. So we're going to start there. Then I'm going to mix in a DP World Tour prop on top of it. So we're going to take a little aside to those averages for just a second to give you guys the insight there. But let's start with this Tom Hoge fade. So the average was about 3.5 per round today. And if we go to the averages for this year, Tom Hoge's like number, 139 when it comes to that ranking, somebody that is well below the average there. And that's compared to the regular PGA Tour, let alone the top 50 like we have in this kind of field. So a Tom Hoge, a player that should project under that 3.5 average. So at even money on a site like this, I think he should be value, even juice towards the under. I think on Draftkings, if I remember correctly, you can just double check it here. We don't even have to guess. I believe he was like minus 130 towards the under. So maybe a slight line value if you're looking at that. It's not quite the minus 140 that I would consider a plus EV value, anything that or more juice. Yeah, he's minus 130 in that direction, which is a slight value. But I think he should be like minus 150 or more juice if I was the one sitting up with the sports book myself. So that's an under I'll take, especially with him really struggling this week. Not just the fact that he's like outside the top 130 on tour. You can see here, I have this sorted by the worst ball striking players. I was line shopping guys to fade. And you can see Tom Hoge here has lost about 6 strokes ball striking so far. He's lost 2.9 off the tee, 2.9 with the approach play so far. some of the worst out of anyone in those 49 players. And I was kind of hinting at that narrative a little bit earlier, but the guys that are kind of out of it don't have much to play for. They're not going to be in the top 30, and they're just kind of like there for no reason. They'd normally be cut. He's exactly in that kind of a camp. So if he doesn't start hot, if he doesn't like fire darts early, I think that you could see him completely kind of disengage at some point, which would work in our favor. So taking that fade, and I love Tom Hoagie. He's one of my guys. I play him a lot more than most do in DFS. In fact, I don't even think he's a terrible option for DFS, like more of that risk reward format, because if he gets started hot, like I could see him running the table, like he could engage, actually care for the rest of the round. But if it starts in the negative direction, like watch out, it's not going to go very well. But that was the prop I took on the PGA side. And then for the last part of this year, it is the Danish Open that we want to look at. The average for birdies was 3.58 per round, which was almost exactly what it was for round one. So some birdies being made, but you got to keep in mind that we had a lot of low tier players that were in that field, a lot of local qualifiers that were really throwing off those averages. Also, the guys that were out of form that are now not going to be playing for rounds 3 and 4, you're still going to get your down performances for the next few days, but that average will probably go up to at least 3.75, 3.8 per round, just based on the talent level alone getting better. But also, and it happens a lot on the DP World Tour, like it's pretty drastic over there, especially with some of like the qualifier fields, like what you have for like the Danish Open, the local Danish people that got in. Some of them really not the best golfers towards the bottom. No offense, right? But just like compared to the guys that are there on average. Also, moving day pin locations. Now, we're not going to do a whole breakdown of the pins and all that quite like we do for the PGA, right? Like that's the main slate. That's what most people are betting. So that's why we spend a lot more time on that. But in general, moving day pins on that DP World Tour side are normally set up for more risk reward as well. So that birdie average might get a slight boost over there. So if that goes up to like 4 per round, that's about where I have the average. Somebody like Sami Välimäki, who is a top 40 birdie maker on the PGA Tour side, is somebody that I'd be willing to take towards the over. So let's go over here, find Sami Välimäki at that 4 number exactly, which I think could be a little bit over that average, but that's still more than reasonable to take for Sami, even if that's the case. Because if we go to this average for Mr. Välimäki, you can see that he's number 32 on the PGA Tour, which is elite level stuff. And it's not like it's a small sample size. I mean, look at this. He has 272 birdies and over 1,000 holes played. And you could say, like, sure, he's not playing all the signature events, every single difficult golf course, but he had a successful enough year where he was playing in a solid amount of like the decent fields and the decently hard golf courses that you've had throughout it. So I'll play that all day, especially as he's one of the quote unquote elite players that you have in this field. He was in the top 10 of the betting odds heading into the weekend. Even in PGA Tour fields, which are much stronger than the DP World Tour side, he was well above the average. I thought was an absolute no-brainer. So the weather, by the way, looks about the same as today. It was super windy for round number 2 over there. It's also going to be pretty windy tomorrow. So I don't really think that's going to change all that much. I think if anything, if somehow the wind lays down, that might help us, but I'm not counting on that whatsoever, right? I think with the current averages that this is a solid bet to go after, especially if they set up the golf course a little bit easier. But that's going to be the first slip I've entered. In fact, the only one I've gone with so far. We just got the board on the prize pick side, so haven't had that much time to go through it quite yet. We'll talk LIV Golf a little bit. I at least want to mention the averages. I haven't entered anything over there yet. Maybe we can line shop together and find something that makes sense to enter. But we're at least going to go through the averages here in a second after we go through the live chat for a minute or so. So let me get a sip of water. Mouth is getting a little bit dry. And I also want to make sure we go through any questions or bets you guys want me to go through. So let's go back. I know we had a question before from even Jose, right? Saying like you were looking at the understrokes of those kind of players. I'm kind of sketched out by like your Michael Kims because like shooting under par, I don't think it's going to be an easy thing to do. But a McIntyre who's in really good form or an Aubert who I bet outright this week, I believe Aubert is probably at 68.5. I had to check what his exact number is. A little bit more reasonable, I would say. So a little sketched out by like the mediocre players. I'm okay with maybe some studs being taken for positive stance plays. And what we've got to realize is that this is an elite of the elite tier field. Your guys that are like normally pretty decent players at PGA Tour events are the scrubs in this kind of field. And, you know, not to pick on Michael Kim in particular, because I love what he does for the community. He's one of my, I don't know, top 15 favorite players that we have in the world. He's not the kind of guy that's like one of the best players in this field. In fact, he's probably one of the bottom like 15 guys, bottom 10 guys that you have in this kind of field. So that's why I'm a little sketched out about that one. He said, so round one, you took some overs on bogeys, maybe playable again now with the course drying up. I would say so. I'm kind of bummed out that they only have elite tier guys on the board though. So I guess depending on the site you're on, like maybe some of the smaller DFS sites or pick'em sites will offer some of the average to mediocre players at 2.5. If that's the case, then for sure, because based on those pin locations we were looking at, I think the average is going to be at least 2.75 to 2.8 per round. And if that's the case, a scrub or even just an average player in this field would be value in that direction. So yeah, I mean, if you could find me a below average guy who's also struggling ball striking, like kind of like a Hoagie, right? Who's out of it, not playing well in the categories that actually matter, that he would be a smash for the over at that 2.5 bogey mark. Unfortunately, the guys that they have posted on like an Underdog and a Prize Picks are your Fleetwoods, your JJ Spahns, not like Scotty Schefflers or Rory McIlroys, but like your next tier down, or maybe even 2 tiers down from like guys like a Scotty Scheffler. So I agree with that sentiment though. I think it's going to play a little bit harder in general. Do I think that the greens will be as soft as they were for the last 2 days? So round one, they actually weren't very soft. They were a lot easier to hit today. So I think that tomorrow it's going to be kind of in between the two. It probably won't be as dry as round one, but they're not going to be nearly as soft as today. Looking at the Bhatia under 4 birdies. Yeah, I was looking at under at 4 birdies on quite a few players, or at least considering it before we got on here. I settled on Tom Hoagie because, I told myself average was 3.5 today. It's going to be a little bit less soft for tomorrow. Like, a crappy player, like for sure made sense for me at that field average. But even to go back to this PGA side, and I do want to talk about the LIV Golf here in a second, so we won't spend too much time on this, but like 4, and we are going to look back at this board, probably try and add at least one more slip in here in this live stream. These guys at 4, like a Lowry, even a Spawn, an English, like there's some guys at 4 that, to get to 5 birdies to skunk us, feels like it's asking quite a bit. And a lot of times we look at those 4s and we look at it as just getting to that number. Push is not what we have to be worried about, right? It's them getting to that 5 number. And then we have to weigh that against their equity at going under for us, which with the average at 3.5, if we can find, like I said, an average to slightly below average player in the category, could be absolute money. So I'm with you on that. I'm not sure if Akshay is my favorite, by the way. And just to give you guys the goods on why that's the case, he makes a decent amount of birdies. Let's see where he ranks at this point. I know he's fallen off a little bit. If I could spell right, it would help, huh? So he's, number 12 on tour and birdie or better percentage. That's the only counter argument I can give you, right? Is that you can probably find somebody at that 4 number who's not quite as good of a birdie maker. He said, thoughts on Colin? He said he know that he was horrid today, but you could see the bounce back. Yeah, and it was all the short game again. It was that in round one. He lost like 3.5 stroke short game. And then ball striking wise, he was a lot worse today. He was not nearly as effective as what he was Thursday. But if it's going to be short game losses, like 3 to 4 strokes per round, when he figures that out and he gains like 2 strokes in any given day, it's going to be a pretty massive round for him. So I could see that coming around rather quickly. Let's get the LIV Golf stuff up so that we can go through those and then do a further deep dive and add at least another slip in there. He said that I know that I liked Hall for round 2. Do I like him again? Yet stat-wise, he was setting up okay. I mean, he was a little putter dependent again for the first 2 rounds, which is his MO. He is one of the best putters on tour, but I don't know if it's as sustainable as some of the other players up top. So I don't know if I'd say I like him for round 3. I loved him for today. Tomorrow, I'd say he's like a 5 out of 10. Like, I don't hate him either. That's for sure. Like, I have him as about like, average across the board, just expecting a little bit of regression. That's kind of what I'm accounting for. That's why I have him as only an average play. Because like on paper, he's a better than average play. It's just like, is he going to do that for all 4 days? Especially when it's him luck sacking it with some of those longer putts. And he said, plus he's 30 for the FedEx. Yeah, that added motivation. So if there's something that can spur somebody on to really make a run, maybe it's that. I could see that. Is Aubert 5 birdies a little too much? Also, he's favored under. Yeah, I agree. And let's see what the sportsbook odds look like. And if you're saying he's favored under like 4.5, that would be some pretty solid value. But let's see. So yeah, he is, right? He's favored for the under at 4.5 there. Yeah, for sure. It's a little too high. And what site has him at 5? I'm assuming Prize Picks, huh? So Prize Picks has him at that 4.5 number. Maybe it's one of the smaller pick'em sites that has him at that. I could see it. If you're talking about at this 4.5, right, him getting to 5 to skunk you, I'm not sure if Aubert is the kind of guy I would pick on personally, at least because I bet on him this week. I think that he's just lighting it up with the form, really fit this golf course well because he's super long and straight off the tee. But 4.5 birdies is asking a lot for anyone. Like maybe not a Scotty Scheffler. Like I'd be taking the over all day at 4.5 birdies if they had Scotty at that sort of projection. But look, like a Xander Schauffele might be a better fade in my opinion, just because he's not putting that well. The form's not nearly as good as some of those other players. And let's look at what his odds are. He might not be as favored under, but let's see. So yeah, he's actually the same thing. He's minus 135 in that direction. I'd personally rather fade Xander than a Ludwig Aubert just because Luddy is just playing so well this week. He said, you always go for the dogs for sure. And yeah, playing your dogs is a viable strategy, man. You always want to play your guys. I do that with Jordan Spieth at times, but I don't do it as a piece of my content, right? That's just something I do for myself. He said, any hope for your guy Vegas this weekend? You got a great lineup with him. You just got to get him to make some birdies. So yeah, you're always viable. I guess outside of the large hole GPPs, you might have to have a slightly better lineup. But if you're talking about like a single entry, anything where you don't have to have the absolute nuts, yeah, they've got 36 holes to make birdies for you. So he's got to be aggressive. He's got to, at least for his sake too, if he wants to make the top 30, probably shoot like minus 12 to minus 15 over the next 2 days. So you'll have to see if he can pull it off for you. I'd say it's a long shot, but you're not completely dead yet. Is Harris English an average guy? Sorry, not familiar with him. In this kind of field he would actually maybe even be slightly below average because this is the top 50 players, but he mixes in. It's not like he's out of his element here. Like there are guys in the field like Brian Campbell that are playing way above their head. Let's put it that way. He said, rushing yards says, thanks, man. Of course. Best of luck there tomorrow. And we're still going through stuff here, though, guys. So we're not ending the live stream. Don't want to confuse anyone. He said, the books are waiting for Robbie Mack to fall on his face. He's been playing so well. What would you say about his under at 69.5 strokes? Yeah, I took his under today. So I'll go through that thought process, and I'll let you kind of apply it to tomorrow. I'm not sure if the 69.5 is something I'm going to attack. But at 70.5 today, right before he teed off, I'm not sure what was going on, but a lot of action came in on his over because he bumped up to 70.5 on regular books. Same thing on Prize Picks as well. I immediately hammered his under. Like it was like an instant snap bet for me because he's playing decent golf. And I feel like the pressure thing is overblown on these players when it's not Sunday. So like, for example, you're saying that like he's priced disrespectfully, right? Because of that. And I kind of agree with it. It's Saturday, right? Like, sure, he's kind of out of his element because it's such a big event and he's leading it. But Robbie Mack's a multiple-time tour winner last year. Like, this is a guy who the DP World Tour cleaned house for multiple years before he came over here. I think Sunday is where you'd see the nerves really start to come out. I don't think it's impossible for them to show their head on round 3, but the sports books have probably taken it too far. So yeah, shooting under par, getting to -1, I think is pretty reasonable for him, especially like just to compare him to some of the other players. Like, let's avoid that pressure narrative bullshit. Like, the more and more I do this, guys, the more and more I realize that the whole narrative thing is just completely overblown. They have guys like Keegan Bradley, who's not nearly as good a form as somebody like McIntyre. And he's -150 under. I'm not sure what the odds are on McIntyre, but let's see. I'm assuming juiced under, right? So yeah, he's -140. So he's still at least got some value in that direction. But yeah, I can get behind that one for sure. In fact, is he available on these pick'em sites? So he's at 69 there. Let's see, is Underdog posting a McIntyre line? Let's see. He is there, but he's at 0.87x. Kind of defeats the purpose when you have to pay that much of a tax with the payout. But at -140 odds, especially if you're, maybe boosting that up with Draftkings, I know they love to hand out boosts like their Christmas candy. Yeah, I would be definitely okay with that sort of a lean. Let's go through this LIV Golf stuff. So LIV Indy was the birdie fest of all birdie fest. If you guys didn't see what happened with Sebastian Munoz, I'll show you right now. He shot -12. It was a 59. It's a par 71. So congrats to him there. But it was maybe the most unique 59 I've ever seen because he made a double bogey on the 5th hole. So this is a golf course in general where there's some water on it, also some out of bounds areas, native areas that can really get you into a spot of trouble. But even then, the birdie average, and when you see this, you're going to be kind of like bugged out, is 5.06 per round. Like, we never see them over 5, like maybe like less than a handful of times a year out of all of the weeks that we cover golf. Are we going to see a birdie average that cracks over that 5 number? And I watched it today. The wind wasn't a factor, but if we go to the forecast there, and I think I'd have it up here. Yeah, this Westfield, Indiana is like right next to where they have it. There's no wind again. For Saturday, it looks perfect. Warm, ball's going to travel a long way. People were driving greens from just a little bit over 300 yards. Like David Puig hit one greenside on a 360-yard hole. It's going to be that same sort of weather and same sort of conditions for Saturday. So these averages of -2.5 and that 5 birdie or better average are pretty much giving us a good idea for this board on LIV Golf. So let's get these two out of there. Let's try and find some more exposure to mix in. If you still have any bets you want me to deep dive, just feel free to let me know. But on the LIV Golf side of things, it is a par 71. So these guys at 67.5 have to shoot -4 to go under. So they're definitely accounting for the conditions. That's why I didn't see a ton of value when I was looking at it. The thing that I was looking at as a potential play was like a David Puig is a very aggressive player. He's also a very long player off the tee that didn't take advantage of the par fives for whatever reason. So I always like that kind of regression with guys that are some of the best par 5 scorers that they have on that tour. So I was considering his over at that 5.5. Maybe even some strokes lines could be in play as well, like a Patrick Reed at 67.5. If the scoring average is -2.5, which strokes wise is about 68.5 strokes, gaining a stroke and a half to the field for Patrick Reed is pretty much his baseline. In fact, let me bring up Data Golf real quick. So just 1 second. There's Patrick Reed. Let's bring up that tab now. So Patrick Reed on the LIV Tour this year is averaging like a stroke and a half gain to the field. And it was even better earlier this year. He was like really killing it in this part of the schedule. He's still been pretty decent lately, but even gaining just like a stroke to the field. And to go to the leaderboard, this is worth noting as well. Let's see how many players shot -4 or better. So -4 or better, there were 23 of the 54 players. So like a little bit over 44% of the field. Actually, I think it's even higher than that, was able to go out there and get to at least that -4 mark. -3 is at 68. Let's see how many players were able to do that. So at least -3, that was 31 players got to at least -3. So that's well over half the field, right? It's a 54-player field. That's what LIV stands for. Let's go back to the scoring average, right? Scoring average, just put that in quotes now, was -2.5. The reason for that is when you scroll down to the bottom, you see these absolute bums, like a Frederick Ketterup that shot +8. Brooks Koepka, I don't know if he was hungover or something, blew out his back or something, smashing his supermodel girlfriend. I don't know. He's +5, right? Not the type of scene that you want to see for some of these players. That completely skews the average because the median for the field, which is probably the better way to look at this kind of data set, where you have those extreme outliers in both directions, right? I mean, -12 for Sebastian Munoz also really throws that off that kind of average. He's using the median, which is at this -3 mark. So if you're using that as the more accurate average, let's say for the field, somebody like Patrick Reed at a 67.5, it's asking him to gain a stroke to that, which I think is reasonable given this kind of track record that we were showing before. So like that's kind of something that I was looking at as well. And I'm not sure if we're going to play both of these. Maybe we'll pick our favorite of the two. In chat, if you have one of these two that is really calling your name, let me know, and it'll be the one that we use for this sort of slip together. But I think both of them would be decent value. And let's go through the David Puig stuff. So Puig for the year is, I think, number 11 in birdie or better percentage. So it's not like he's like top 5 in the category, which, we'd love to see. But if you go to the season before that, I think he is. So 2024, number 4 on the category. I don't know if he played in 2023, but let's see. So didn't have the stats in 2023, but year before that, right, top 5 in the category, still pretty decent in 2025. If the average was 5 per round, it's at least tempting for me to want to take that. But I'm almost thinking the Patrick Reed one might be slightly better value just because, he's been so consistent on that tour, and David Puig's been a little bit more of a loose cannon. So let's use Patrick Reed for this, and we can take a look at even the DP World Tour board again if we want to. I only did go back to the Sami Välimäki one because I entered it today and he pushed, but he could have made a lot more putts, so I'm going to go right back to that one. Let's see, Elvis Smiley. He's a pretty good young talented player. In fact, let's do a little deep dive on how he's played lately. I know it's been a little worse, but he showed up in the major for a little bit. Let's see. So T31, missed cut, T34, T38. Yeah, not great. So maybe Elvis Smiley, if he had been coming in with remotely better form, would have been considerable. But earlier this year, he was lighting it up. In fact, I believe he even won on the DP World Tour at the very early stages of the season. Same thing with a Sadier. He was able to pull that off a few months ago with that dub. A Nicholas Norgard Moeller, now he's up here at 4.5 as opposed to that 4 projection. He makes a lot of birdies on the PGA Tour side. In fact, he's fallen off a bit, but let's see where he ranks out. If I could get up here, get to actually tell you. So Norgard is number 28 on tour in the category. I mean, that's even better than Semi Valimaki. So I guess that's obviously why he's 0.5 higher. But with birdie conditions, I think the average probably going up to just a little bit under 4 per round. There's probably value on that sort of thing. So let's throw that in the shopping cart. Maybe it's the Moeller that we go with. I know he's playing well as well. I mean, today he went off. Had one of the best rounds of anyone on the field. We can also consider Rasmus Njergaard Peterson. Now, he's not a PGA Tour guy. He's a DP World Tour guy. I'm not sure exactly where he ranks out. Let's just, guess. We'll bring it up. I think he's top 5 on tour in the category. If that's the case, that's something we could even consider there as well, because some of the other guys in the quote-unquote top 5 hardly even play on that side. Let's go to stats. Let's go to scoring. Go to birdies and then sort it by birdies per round. So he's okay, not as high as I thought he was going to be on here. Number 15, averages about 4 birdies better per round. So still one of the best birdie makers that you have on that side of things. But I thought he was going to be like in that top 5. So a Chikara, worth noting, he was on the board at 4.5. He's at number 11 there. Wu Ashun, he's at number 12. Was he at 4? I think I was winning Ding, actually, that they had it for. Yeah. Maybe Moeller might be the best. Rasmus is in first, by the way. So Rasmus is always somebody we could look at. PGA Tour stats, though, that's where he's playing most of his golf this year. Let's see where he rates out. Number 33 in birdie better percentage. So right around a Norgard. So almost exactly the same at the value on those two. I would say the only thing that maybe makes Moeller a little bit better is that he's not in first, so he's not dealing with maybe as much pressure, which is kind of silly to say, right? Like, even then, like, maybe I should just like catch that and not even look at it, because I think it's kind of silly to look at it for round 3. But the sports books definitely account for that. Like, that's something that they don't shy away from. And I'm curious, they didn't have the odds for round 2. Let me see if Draftkings is posting anything for like the strokes and that sort of stuff. So they are. So let's see what Norgard's at. I'm just kind of like curious. So he's minus 125 over. And then what's Valimaki at? I mean, he's probably juiced under, right? Or he doesn't have a line. Yeah, so he doesn't have a line posted. Let's try and find like a comp for him, because he's like obviously maybe not an elite birdie maker, but he's at least an above average birdie maker in this sort of field. So like an Andy Sullivan, he's better than that. And Andy Sullivan is at 4.5, albeit juiced under there at minus 150. Chikara, probably about the kind of level that you'd have him at, maybe slightly worse than Chikara. Like, and I don't know, they have some sort of vendetta against him. The books never project him the way that they should, even though his metrics are a lot better than they give him credit for. But let's say that he's like minus 140 towards the under, like kind of splitting the middle between those two. At 4, we're getting that sort of push equity towards the over. So I like that one that we are getting there. What I'm seeing here with the odds, though, is that like Chikara's juiced under. I don't know if I really agree with that, but even with that, guys like Peterson are juiced towards the over. You can see Jesper Svensson, who, by the way, if we go over here to the PGA Tour side, he also makes a lot of birdies. In fact, he's number 9 on the PGA Tour in that category. So he's probably the best one out of all of these that we've seen. I mean, the odds are behind it. He's got that juice behind it. He's a decent birdie maker to begin with. So yeah, we're going to do that. This is going to be another slip that we mix in. So 2 DP World Tour props on a live stream has got to be a record for the amount that we've used in 1:30 to an hour setting here. But we'll go through some more PGA stuff as well. Just wanted to do our due diligence across all of these different slates that we have. And there can be value across all of them. And the thing that's great about it is that it helps you out with the multipliers. If you're trying to enter slips that are 3-4 legs, especially those kind of ones where correlation can kind of hurt you, when you have these kind of different events to mix in, kind of get rid of that correlation and the multipliers, it makes your life a lot easier when it goes to putting them together. So I know we focus on 2-mans for this live stream, but if you're adding on top of it, mixing and matching and getting to those 4 or 5-mans, mixing in different events is probably the preferred way to get that kind of thing done. Let's go back to PGA. Also, make sure that you guys haven't thrown anything in chat that we need to go through. So you're looking at Michael Kim for the over at 69.5. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning on overs for strokes. That's what I was looking at before. It feels like the average would be about 70 strokes, and Michael Kim is average at best, and that's not a diss, by the way. It's just the kind of byproduct of it being a top 50 field. So yeah, I think the value's towards the over on that one. What's going on, Phil? Yeah, it has been a while. Looking forward to football season. I'm not sure if that's your main thing around here, but glad to have you back on the channel, even if it's not. We have Rasmus. He says, you took Rasmus. He gave you 7, maybe playable again. Yeah, definitely playable again, dude. He's an aggressive player. I like Jesper a little bit more. That's why we took it for that. But yeah, all of those guys that were like top 50 birdie makers on the PGA Tour should be probably at least even money at 4.5, if not a little bit over. He said, is it risky to go Robbie Mack for Showdown? Risky with the ownership, I would say. I mean, he's playing some of the best golf of anyone in the field, so he's not the kind of play where you're getting bad form or anything. In fact, he's got the best form of anyone over the first 36 holes, but he is risky from the aspect that you're going to be holding hands with a lot of the field. So if you're okay with that and you can differentiate elsewhere, or if you're in a contest where ownership's not that big a deal, then he's a totally fine play. He projects really well for tomorrow. But in large field GPPs, like let's say the big $5 or $25 for tomorrow, he loses some of his utility because of the fact that he's going to be used by so many other players. So that's the only thing I'll say about it. But yeah, I bet him outright this week. He was a core play for me. I surely hope that he keeps it up over the next few days. He said, you finally joined on the Patreon. Glad to hear that, AR. Welcome to the crew. And he said, can you deep dive on Novak and Stevens and also calling over JT at plus 100? So yeah, some 2 balls. I'm going to hold off on those for just a couple minutes, AR. We are going to deep dive the 3 balls, but I'll get back to that one. I do want to do a little bit more on the PGA side for the pick'ems before we do that. Then you said Ryan Fox under fairways. He's at 8, right? Yeah, he's at 8, so he'd have to hit 7 or less. Like, I get it, because he should be below the field average. For sure, he's not somebody that's very accurate off the tee. But at the same time, they've got to say, okay, he's got to go under by like 1.5, because the average was about 8.6 today, a little bit over 8.6 per round. He's got to lose 1.5 fairways to the field. Now, I think that's pretty reasonable. Let's see where he is with his leaderboard position. He's not playing that well, right? Yeah, he's plus 7. I could get behind that, and here's why. I was a little sketched out because of the push equity at that 8 number. But what we have to remember about Ryan Fox is that this guy now has nothing to play for. Like, he's just going to hit driver around this place because he's starting from so far behind that I think that it makes quite a bit of sense. So let's actually throw it into the shopping cart. I think that's a really good shout. And those guys going off early, regardless of category, like I kind of just want to start with these guys at the top because they're the ones that are teeing off first and pick on them if we can. So Ryan Fox, for example, like we could even go to like his birdie line and potentially pick on him that way. Getting to 5 birdies is going to be tough for anyone, let alone somebody that might be a little bit mentally checked out. Now, I'm kind of curious on his birdie or better percentage. Let's look at that. I think he's pretty decent in that category. So that's why he's at 4, a little bit over that field average. But let's double check to confirm that's the case. There's Ryan Fox. Ryan Fox is number 53 on tour, so he's a decent birdie maker. Not anything that's earth-shattering there, though. Yeah, fairway fade might be a little bit better on that one. I don't think that this is a slate, though, that you only have to take fades on, by the way, at least for this PGA side. There could be some value on positive stance plays in specific spots, but I do think in general that the sports books, and that's kind of what these pick'em sites end up mirroring after the fact, have taken it a little bit too far. So, for example, like a Ricky at 69.5, like I think that's a pretty good projection. Like maybe even you take him for the under. Guy could just not make a putt for his life today, which played to my detriment, but he ended up keeping it together for the most part, even with that happening. He missed a 4-footer. He missed like 3 or 4 from like 7 or 8 feet. He was just scraping the hole from 15 to 20 feet as well. So he'll probably bounce back in a big way there. But there's also guys at 69 strokes, like a Keegan Bradley here, for example, that, I was also eyeing up for a fade a little bit earlier. So we're probably not going to add a third slip here. We're probably just going to leave it at those two, but I wanted to add a little bit more from the strokes angle and, fairways, like somebody shouted out there before, as potential plays to consider. And I do want to do one last little glance here at bogeys or worse as well. Let's see. Yeah, 2.5 for a lot of your above average players. I was kind of mentioning that before, right? Where, if it was 2.5 on a shitty player, like I'd be okay with taking an over on bogeys. Not so much when it's your JJ Spahns, who's top 50 on tour on that. Henley, he's the same thing. A Tommy Fleetwood, a Rory that are, pretty elite tier bogey avoiders, even in this sort of field, are priced pretty appropriately, I'd say, in that sort of category. And bogey a better matchup or birdie better matchup, terrible. Hate betting them. Normally not a lot of value on these unless you're looking at a potential under. Doesn't look like any really stand out for that though. Yeah, nothing that really stands out there too much. And yeah, let's go on to some of these two balls and all of that now. So to get through your question, we're also just going to go through the board, try and find something to enter. Haven't quite had a chance to do my deep dive yet, but that's what this live stream is for. And we're going to be here for the next 10 or so minutes doing so. Let's get to it. So you were asking about Novak and Stevens on the two ball. So let's figure out who those guys are playing against. So Novak Stevens is at the top. So it's those two going against each other. Okay, I didn't know if they were going to be separate matchups that you wanted me to break down. So they're exactly even money. And my go-to on this, and this is at least where I set my baseline on these matchups, I'll still look at like the round 1 and 2 stats, but I like to go to the last 24 rounds, and I like to set a baseline with the two players. So let's go Sam Stevens, Andrew Novak, and I want to see just their raw shots gained per round. So, and it's almost even. So I think them being at minus 115 a pop probably makes a lot of sense, at least if you're looking at their form over the last month or so. Novak, 0.29 shots gained per round. You can see 0.25 shots gained for Sam Stevens. So the slimmest of margins favoring the Andrew Novak side. And what we can do now is go to live. So now that we have 36 holes with these players, we can see what they've done for the first few rounds. It looks like they've been terrible across the board. So there's not really that much that we can lean into, I guess. But ball striking has also been about identical for the two players. Both losing about 3 strokes between the off the tee and approach play so far. So I would say that this even money makes 100 million% sense. Like they've been almost identical this week. They're playing similar golf over the last month and a half. So yeah, no lean on that one for me, man. So that's as close to a 50-50 coin flip as I've pretty much ever seen before. And then you said Colin at plus 100 over JT. Let's look at that. So Colin's a pretty good short game regression candidate. So that's definitely working out for him in the positive. And then, yeah, he's plus money against Justin Thomas. I guess that's the whole narrative working against him, huh? That's the whole him switching caddies, him looking lost, everyone acting like the sky is falling on him. So maybe that's why the odds are so favored towards Justin Thomas here. But even over their let's go to the last 24 rounds. That's more so what matters because we know this week, right, it's going to be about even because that's why they're teeing off together. But over the last 24 rounds, they've also been pretty close to the same number, 0.5 for Morikawa, 0.59 shots gained total for Justin Thomas. Yeah, let's see. And he's the underdog. So I think that it's an okay bet at plus 100. I don't think that it's like drastic value. I would say that it's, about where I would put it with that plus 100. They're definitely pricing in the fact that he's, with somebody new this week. He hasn't looked sharp over the last month either. Like his short game has been atrocious over his last 3 starts. I kind of get it. I think that you probably want more than the plus 100 on that one to make it a viable bet. Like if you did it right now, it wouldn't be something that would be super negative EV in my opinion. It's just that you wouldn't be really generating any value on that sort of a lean. That's kind of where I have that one. Yeah, the Ryan Fox under at fairways I think is a decent lean. We saw that one before. He said it's pretty flat across the board for the weather tomorrow for the DP World Tour stuff. It's pretty windy. So it was windy today, and it's going to be windy for tomorrow as well. I normally say that you want to favor the morning guys because it'll be a little bit softer. So that would be the first maybe 3-4 hours of tee times that get that advantage. He said you're looking at Pench for the under at 69.5 in the PM. And he said for some reason, there's a lot of guys PM that are juiced over. So Yeah, I mean, the forecast that they had up for Saturday looked pretty flat. Let's see, I don't have it on my recents. I guess it must have gone away when I brought up the stuff for LIV Golf. Okay, well, I guess we'll just have to base it on the forecast that we had before. Yeah, it looked pretty flat on that forecast. It said 10 to 15 miles an hour wind the entire day. It said the gusts in the afternoon, I think, were like closer to 15 to 20 miles an hour. So compared to the morning, it was slightly worse. So yeah, if you're looking at a guy like Penge, guy who's towards the top end of the leaderboard after 36 holes, I don't think that he should be way juiced towards the over. So if you're getting plus money for the under, I'm okay with that. He said he played Fox twice. You're not going to lie, he hit 3 fairways today. Yeah, I mean, to be frank, I mean, to go back to that, like that could be a really, really good lean. Like the whole don't give a fuck factor, like legit matters. Like if you're at the point where like you're not making it, you're not going to sit around just hit irons all day. Like what's the point and what's the fun in that, right? You're going to go out there and hit driver because it's like, you know what? What if I make 10 birdies and shoot, a 60 around here? Or shoot like a 61 or 62 and I can get myself into the top 25 heading into Sunday. Then maybe there's a chance you get into the top 5 and you save your spot into the next week. But yeah, they're not going to hit irons to do that, right? It's going to be like, fuck it, full send it driver. Who knows what ends up happening? But it's I don't know. Fox is definitely going to hit driver. He loves doing that. It's a random question. What are my thoughts on the mini driver? A lot of players are using them now, and they seem like an automatic fairway finder. Yeah, I think it depends on the player. Some guys like them. Some players don't really like that kind of technology. Ricky Fowler has found a lot of success with it. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, I haven't used one myself. One of my buddies has one. I've swung it like one time before, and I hit the fairway, so it worked the one time I used it. But the ball went like 30 yards shorter than my driver does. So I don't know. I'm pretty accurate off the tee with my normal driver, so it's not really for me. But if you're somebody that Ricky can kind of spray it at times, it'd be good for those kind of players. He said, "What's up, Luke? You just saw me mention more. How about plus 100 is fair? How about plus 130? Yeah, man, like plus 130 is bettable because plus 100, it's like, I don't know. Okay, like maybe he should be 50-50 with Justin Thomas, but plus 130, at least you're getting the credit for him really looking crappy over the last few events. So yeah, I don't know. Knowing that there's a plus 130 out there now, plus 100 is not great. Is it Kitayama at plus 130 versus Cam Young? And you also appreciate the feedback. Yeah, both really good form players, right? Recent winners heading into this week. I would say Cam Young should be the favorite because he's the better player long term between those two. But I'm curious. I mean, we know they have the spike week, but outside of the spike week, what does it look like? And I'm assuming Kitayama is going to be favored here, actually, which would support you on this sort of thing. But let's see it. So the last 24 rounds, it's exactly identical. So I guess this is the same thing with Morikawa, right? If you're getting plus 130 odds, that feels like a decent shot in the dark. Like, I don't know if I'd go like a full unit shot in the dark on it. It'd probably be like a half a unit sprinkle on both of those. And then if you happen to cash one of the two, you're into the profit. And if you don't, like, it's only 1 unit that you've lost overall, which is, for most people, 1% of your bankroll. For me, it's 0.5% of my bankroll, 1 unit. That's not that big of a deal, right? It's pretty much 1 bet lost if that ends up happening. So that's how I would handle it, Sava. I think both of those are worthy of a little bit of sprinkle. But let's do some line shopping ourselves because I did not have a chance to do this. So I'm going to start the top end of the board because I kind of like to sweat out these 2 balls when they're the leaders, the guys that are going to be on TV the most. Just gives you a little bit more skin in the game to actually see them hit their golf shots. I normally get to follow them on the golf course a bit, which is kind of nice, but don't have that luxury up in Maryland. But let's see. McNeely versus Hall is about even money. It seems about right. Both players putted over their heads the first couple days. So, yeah, it's kind of just destiny, I guess, that they both got paired up with each other. Obear slight favorite over Hideki. That seems about right. See, Burns versus Hovland. I'm tempted to take Hovland because Sam Burns was so putter dependent. And I think he was putter dependent again today, but let's fact check ourselves before we say that. So yeah, round 1, gained 3 strokes putting today, also gained 1.5. I don't know if I'd say he's putter dependent, but he was about a neutral with the ball striking stats. So that's what I'm tempted to take at that even money mark. And perhaps there's other books that have him at like plus 100 or something like that. And, if we could get anything into the plus money on Hovland, I would be an immediate buyer on that sort of a matchup. Let's see. We got Ricky versus Pendrith. Not really something I'd want to bite on there.
Harris versus Day. Yeah, same thing. Pretty much a toss-up, and you've got toss-up odds on both those. Ricky, by the way, I mean, very impressive what he's done. And I already told you guys, I think he's going to bounce back a little bit. I want to look at what Pendrith has done because I know how Ricky's played the first few days, but I'm not exactly sure what Taylor's done. Taylor today gained ball striking and then was neutral short game. Round one did the same thing. So yeah, he's not like attackable, but it does look like Ricky's been hitting the ball a little bit better than Pendrith has. If this was minus 110, I'd be betting Ricky Fowler, but with it being like minus 125, maybe minus 130 elsewhere, it's probably about where it should be, I would say. Maybe slightly off. Maybe it should be closer to minus 130, minus 145. Let's keep this rolling. So we got Griffin versus Siwoo. Griffin's slight favorite. Yeah, his form's been better than Siwoo. Is minus 125 enough, though? Is the question. So let's compare those two. Again, 24-round baseline is what we're using for most of this here. Any minute now when these will load in for these two. So he's 1.3 shots gained better per round. So yeah, I don't know if this is good enough odds. In fact, the only sort of proofreading we're going to have to do to figure out whether this is something to bet is let's see how they're both playing to this point. So Griffin, let's look at the full event so far. He's been a little bit better than average tee to green in all three categories, and then losing putting. That's a good stat profile. I mean, it's not great, but it's not like it's short game heavy. And then Siwoo Kim has lost strokes with the two ball striking categories, has gained over 2 strokes around the green, and also lost strokes putting. So considering that Ben Griffin's also been the much better player over the last 24 rounds, this is an absolute steal, in my opinion, at minus 125. So those are probably both bettable, and those are probably the two matchups that we go with for now. I've got to wait for Hard Rock Bet to post and to see exactly where they have their odds at. They're sometimes a little bit different than where these sports books have them. But with Victor Hovland and Ben Griffin specifically, there might even be more matchup exposure I end up adding on top of that. If I get the same or better odds, I'll be playing them for myself. So for all the exposure I'm getting to you guys can find that on my Patreon page. It includes all the pick'em slips that I'm taking on Prize Picks and also Underdog. Also, all the sportsbooks bets that I'm adding in as well. Those are matchups, 2 balls, also my outrights of the week. You guys can find those on my Patreon page. So best of luck with everything that you guys are taking for round 3. Hope you can cash out on a lot of those bets that we're placing. Getting a little bit late over here, but going to do a little bit more deep diving on the board before calling it a night and heading out to have some fun with some buddies at the bar. So classic Saturday night, I guess, or classic Friday night heading into Saturday here for your 30-year-old me. But best of luck out there with everyone. And hopefully we can have ourselves a round 3.